Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I've had this video on my mind and on my heart for a while, and I really wanted to make it because I just feel like it's something that most people struggle with. How many of you feel like you have too much on your plate? How many of you wish you had more time? Everybody has the same amount of time, and you are in control of how you fill your time. And in one breath we can be saying, I wish I had more time, but then in the next breath we're squandering the time that we have by saying yes to things that we should be saying no to. So this video is for you if you are struggling to say no and you want some clarity to know what to say no to and how to say no. That's what I'm going to cover in this video today. In 2013, my life kind of fell apart. I became extremely ill. I had severe adrenal fatigue, which also triggered an autoimmune disease, which at that stage was undiagnosed and untreated. And I became so ill that I was bedridden. I was so exhausted that even lying in bed, some days I couldn't even hold a book up to read. I could literally just lie there with my muscles aching with exhaustion. And I just could not function in my normal life. It was impossible. I couldn't cook meals, I couldn't do the shopping, I couldn't clean my house, I couldn't look after my family, and I certainly couldn't go out and about and enjoy myself. I just had no energy, no resources. I was down and out for the better part of 6 months before I began to get treatment and my health began to improve. During that time, I had to learn how to let go because I didn't have a choice. And I learned that saying no to things is not the hard part. Being okay with saying no to things is the hard part. But if you can learn how to do that, there is so much freedom and peace that comes. When I was sick, I used to use the analogy, it felt like my life was a house and that house had been demolished and there was nothing left. And then when I became well, it was like I was rebuilding my life, but I was very, very intentional about what I put back in. If you lost your whole home and everything in it, you wouldn't rush out and buy all the clutter you had. You would think carefully about what you replaced. And it was the same when I began rebuilding my life again. I began to set boundaries for myself and defend them, and I began to say no to things. And I continued saying no to things like I'd had to when I'd been extremely ill and just couldn't say yes. And guess what? The world kept turning, and I realized how much freedom there was in doing so. And so that's what this video is about today, to help you find that freedom and peace and be able to say no when you need to. There is no nobility in setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. It is not selfish to look after yourself and to manage your resources wisely. Saying no is an act of self-care, and we talk about self-care all the time. It's a bit of a trend topic, and people say, I'm having my nails painted, self-care, I'm doing a face mask, self-care. But really, genuine self-care is caring enough about yourself to set boundaries and defend them and say no when you need to. Part of that is recognizing where your responsibilities end. How many of us hear about somebody having a problem and we adopt that problem? Give it to me, I'll be responsible for that. We get ourselves so involved, we need to solve the problem. I actually saw this happening when I was in my 30s and I had a much younger friend, and we were driving somewhere and somebody phoned her and told her about this problem they had. They were stuck somewhere, their car couldn't start, whatever. And I could actually physically see her wilting. She was doing this as she was talking to the person on the phone. It was like she was bearing this burden. Give it to me, I'll become responsible for it. Her friend was just chatting while they waited. They had already sorted everything out, or they would be sorting everything out. But the person that I was with just automatically began to adopt this problem as her own and feel responsible and need to solve this other person's problem. How many times do we do that? We just assume that if we've been asked to do something that it's now our responsibility just because we've been asked. Or we see something that needs doing and we say, oh, I'll do that. Guess what? You are not that special, and if you say no, the world will continue to turn. People will find other solutions and they will make a plan. I saw this happen when I was sick and I had to say no to things, and I felt like I was letting people down, but they just carried on. They made another plan. And that's what I remind myself. So I've lived in our current location for 4 years. So 4.5 years ago, people managed without me. And if I was to die, people would manage without me again. Sometimes you actually just need someone to give you permission to say no. So if that's what you need, this is me giving you permission to say no. Not only is it a good thing to do, it is a vital thing to do. Please don't be me. Don't end up literally burning out and collapsing before you learn these lessons. I had to learn the hard way because Apparently I can't learn these things the easy way. Don't be me. Now, it's one thing to say no to the requests that are placed on you, but also you need to say no to yourself if you find yourself volunteering for things too often. There was an article in a recent Bella Grace magazine that I read that really resonated with me, and it's completely on topic. And on the topic of saying no, she says, "But why is it so hard, even when you're confident and strong, even when you say it with love, even when you know it's the right thing? We worry about missing opportunities or being left behind or hurting the feelings of our friends, leaving them with the impression that they aren't important and letting people down. Women have been trained since childhood to be pleasers. Like yoga, saying no is a practice to perform or work at repeatedly so as to become proficient. It's truly an essential skill for our well-being, and I wholeheartedly subscribe." This is so true. I promise you it gets easier to say no the more often you do it. And the more that you say no and you see that it's not the end of the world, things carry on and people find a way to manage without you, then it becomes easier to say no in future. When you're tempted to say yes to something, remind yourself that if you say yes to this thing, that means you have to say no to something else. Think about all the things you wish you had more time for. And when you're being asked to do something or feeling compelled to volunteer for something, ask yourself, is this thing more important or more enjoyable than the things on my list that I wish I had more time for? Now, I told you I was going to share with you a way to figure out what to say no to, and I have a handy dandy flowchart that I have created that I use all the time in my own life when I'm deciding to say yes or no to something. So I'm going to use an example as an illustration. Let's say the circumstance is somebody at church has asked you to do a flower arrangement for a baby shower. They know that you're good with flowers and they've said, "Please will you do a beautiful flower arrangement for us for this baby shower and also corsages for all of the women attending." And you're tempted to say yes. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to do this thing? Because here's the thing, there are so many things in life that we have to do that we don't want to do. Why are we adding in things that we don't even have to do and don't want to do? So if the answer to the question, do I want to do it, is no, then say no, and that's okay. If the answer is yes, then you need to ask yourself the next question, which is, why do I want to do it? When you start to examine why, you may realize that perhaps it's a bad reason that you want to say yes. Now, a good reason is a reason that supports your values and things that are important to you. A bad reason is the opposite. So if you realize, I want to say yes to doing these flowers because everyone will go, "Oh, she's so talented," and they'll be all impressed, and I'll have pictures to share on social media and everybody there will be impressed, and you realize that it's actually just because of your own pride that you want to say yes, then you need to say no. If, however, it is a good reason that you realize maybe you really care about the woman whose baby shower it is, you know that flowers mean a lot to her, you know she's been having a tough time, you're close to her and you really want her to feel uplifted and supported, and that's why you want to do these flowers, it's not an automatic yes. You've examined your reasons, you've got good reasons, and you think, I should just say yes to this. No, there's one more question before you say yes. The next question is, will saying yes have a negative impact on me or my family? And by that I mean, is it going to create financial pressure? Do you actually have the money to buy all of these flowers? Is it going to create extra stress and time pressure? Do you actually have the time to do these flowers? Are your hands already full and you don't have space in your schedule that week, and it's just going to mean you staying up late and not getting enough sleep and being crabby? If it's going to have a negative impact on you or your family, you need to say no. And this is the really hard part, is when you're saying no to things you really want to say yes to, and for good reason. But it's still wise to say no. If, however, you realize, well, I have all that time on Friday morning, there's nothing in my schedule, buying the flowers is not a big deal, and I'll really enjoy putting them together in time for the baby shower on Saturday, then go ahead and say yes. You've answered the 3 questions, and then you can say yes. But don't say yes until you have gone through this flowchart and answered all 3 of those questions, and be honest with yourself. It's really hard to say no to the things you really want to do, but you know that it's wiser to say no to. There've been times where a friend invited me to go shopping, and I really wanted to have time with my friend, and I had the money available to go shopping, and I had the time to go shopping, but I was exhausted that week and I knew I needed to rest, and I still had to say no. It stings in the moment, but I promise you that overall and over time you will be much happier. Sometimes in those situations I have still said yes, but I've done so knowing it's a conscious choice that I have consequences to suffer. I know it's going to create pressure, or I know I'm not going to get enough sleep or whatever, but I'm still choosing to say yes. Then I don't complain about it later. I suck it up, I have a busy week, whatever it is, but I know that it's a conscious choice. I'm not just automatically saying yes to everything. I want to share a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. She said, "Long ago, when I was struggling to become a writer, a wise older woman once said to me, 'What are you willing to give up in order to have the life you keep saying you want?' I said, 'You're right, I really need to start learning how to say no to things I don't want to do.' She corrected me, 'No, it's much harder than that. You need to learn how to start saying no to things you do want to do, with the recognition that you have only one life and you don't have time and energy for everything.'" That is so true. You only have one life, you only have 24 hours in a day, and if you're saying yes to something, it means you're saying no to something else. Recognize the choice there and make the choice that's going to give you the life that you actually want. So we've talked about why you should say no and what you should say no to. The next question is, how do you say no? Because that's really hard if you're not used to doing it, and you don't want to offend people, and yeah, it's tough. So if you have a few techniques to use, it is easier to say no in the moment. By the way, no is a complete sentence. You don't need to explain to somebody why you're saying no. It's none of their business. Even if they ask you, you could fudge around. You don't actually need to tell them why you're saying no. No is a complete sentence. But I know that it's hard to just go no, so here's how you do it. First of all, I don't carry a calendar with me. I find it hard to say no to somebody in the moment, face to face, when they're asking me to do something or attend something, so I just don't carry my calendar with me, so that I can genuinely say to them, "I'll have to check my calendar, let me get back to you about that." Then I could go home, think about it properly, run the flow chart through my head, I can check my calendar for real, and if it's something that I need to say no to, I can say no on the phone or next time I see them or via text. And it's so much easier when I've thought about it, taken a moment, I have my why behind me, than to just say no in the moment when they're asking me and I want to please them. Other polite ways of saying no are, "I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me." They don't need to know why it doesn't work for you, it just doesn't work for you, and they can't argue with that. I find if you start giving people excuses, they start arguing with your excuses. So if somebody asks you to babysit their 2-year-old all morning on Thursday, and you know that you've got a project with a deadline, and you start saying, "Oh, I've got this thing to write," then they'll say, "Oh, but she'll probably sleep during that time, you can write it then." Or if you say, "Well, I'm expecting a call," they can say, "Oh, she'll be quiet, just give her some toys to play while you take your call." So just say no, just say, "That doesn't work for me, I'm sorry, can we do it another day?" And that's another tip. Offer them a different solution. Either suggest somebody else who can help if you can't help, suggest a different day that would work better for you. If you're just saying no, you're kind of pushing the problem straight back onto them. But if you say something like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't watch your 2-year-old on Thursday morning, but my neighbor is off school at the moment and she's looking for babysitting gigs," that gives them a different solution. They may or may not take that solution, but that's not your responsibility. But it will make you feel better because you still feel as if you're being helpful. My favorite way of saying no is, "I'm sorry, I have plans." They don't need to know if your plans are to rest that day, or if your plans are to watch Netflix and catch up on your current show, or if your plans are literally just to not do that thing that you've been asked to do. By saying to somebody that you have plans, they are more easily able to accept your no. Or you could say, "Oh, I'm sorry, not this time." Then it shows that you're still open to being helpful, you're still open to saying yes, but just right now that's not going to work for you. Pay attention to what happens when you say no. So in the example of watching your friend's 2-year-old, if you later say, "Oh, what did you actually manage to do on that day?" she'll tell you what you managed to do. She would have made a plan, even if she had to cancel the thing that she was going to do because she couldn't get a babysitter. That's also okay, and that is her choice, and that is her life and her responsibility. But you'll notice that 99% of the time people make another plan, and when you start to pay attention to that and realize how it happens, it feels like less of a burden when somebody asks you to do something, and you feel a little bit more free to say no. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. This is not intended for you to be a grumpy, selfish person and just to say no to everybody, or if you don't fancy doing something. That's not what this video is about. This video is about living a life that is intentional and that supports your values and that affords you peace and doesn't add pressure to you. That's what it's actually about. By all means, say yes to the things that really matter to you, but just stop saying yes to everything. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you learned to say no? Do you struggle to say no? I would recommend reading Gretchen Rubin's book called The 4 Tendencies. It is very eye-opening as to why you say yes to things or why you say no to things as well. I'll link it down below. The 4 tendencies are rebel, questioner, obliger, and upholder. And if you are an obliger or upholder, you are probably going to find it very hard to say no to things. I am a questioner, which makes it a bit easier for me, but definitely check that book out if you want to know how to manage your own tendency and make it a little bit easier to say no to things. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.